Are you an overwhelmed SaaS founder ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those you don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where SaaS founders win their next funding round by convincing a panel of preschoolers that vegetables are actually secret superpower-inducing candy. That might be easier than some VC pitches these days. Now, I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I really help B2B SaaS founders like you scale from 7 figures, which is good, to 8 and 9 figures, which is outstanding. We supercharge revenue growth, create premium valuation, and craft the business you're proud of and a life of impact and freedom that you absolutely love. As we usher in the vibrant warmth of summer, we also celebrate an extraordinary rite of passage, the culmination of an educational journey. Yes, it is graduation season. Where I live in Texas, I'm at the intersection of kind of 4 suburbs, and each has had graduation ceremonies staggered over the last few weeks. And a dozen universities around here have done the same thing over, say, the last 3 weeks or so. The last one was this last Saturday. And one, it's a big deal. It's certainly a rite of passage. Graduation marks the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. It's a major milestone. Celebration that someone has navigated the path, strewn with challenges, braved the storm of exams, papers, projects, and emerged victorious on the other side. Your diploma is not just a piece of paper. It's a testament to your perseverance, your dedication, and hunger for knowledge. And, maybe for some, it's just like, I'm done. I'm out of here. Over the past few years, there's been a fair amount of, we'll say, mudslinging between generations. Old people stuck in their old ways and the younger, lazier generation who just wants everything for free. And yeah, there are differences. But I have to say that I am really, really hopeful for the future. Sure, there are some entitled brats that get spotlighted, particularly on social media, but for the most part, the next generation I know is hardworking, committed, and most of them have some pretty high character. Not what you see on the news and that kind of stuff. I had the privilege of spending time with around 40 SaaS founders in their 20s over the past 2 weeks at a couple different events. They're doing incredible things. It's really inspiring work. Some with degrees and others without. They were smart, scrappy, and most of all, determined. And that makes me really hopeful for the future. It's inspiring. Every week, I see people rise to the expectations placed on them. A long time ago, one of an old manager, don't expect too much and you won't be disappointed. That's terrible leadership advice. So that's garbage, honestly. And when I expect excellence, I'm rarely disappointed. I see creativity, innovation, and a willingness to do whatever it takes. As we delve into today's discussion, think about that. Let's carry with us a sense of hope and promise. Celebrate our graduates for sure. The future of SaaS and tech founders is in that bunch. And I look forward to the future with renewed optimism, especially after the last few weeks and just seeing some of the ideas and the creativity. So here's to new beginnings, to limitless potential, and a future that's as bright as the Texas summer sun. It's not one generation versus another. It's the best of all of us working together, bringing that experience and creating the future of business together. Today's episode is sponsored by Champion Leadership Group, the ultimate resource for SaaS founders and C-suite executives to accelerate capital-efficient growth. Unlock your business's potential by leveraging our time-tested SaaS growth toolkit, blueprints, and frameworks designed to help you scale ARR from 7 to 8 to 9 figures. Collaborate with an elite network of SaaS visionaries from all generations. Celebrate wins and overcome setbacks together. Prioritize strategic decisions to create profitable growth, premium valuation, and freedom. Elevate your SaaS trajectory with Champion Leadership Group. You can learn more at championleadership.com. Our SaaS founder earlier this week was Dr. Jonathan Bakhtari, CEO of both E7 Health and U.S. Drug Test Centers. He talked about how SaaS and tech are solving patient care and employer convenience challenges all together in healthcare. It's really, really cool. Our expert guest last week was Sam Baker, principal at Scale Venture Partners. Sam talked about the future of SaaS and gave us a state of the market from a unique perspective, and that is from a capital partner, somebody who's right there in the middle of it right now. My favorite part was when he talked about the go-to-market repeatability. I think it's a really cool concept. If you missed either one of those episodes, go back and give it a listen, because it is definitely worth your time. Great, great guest. And speaking of great guests, my guest today is Phil Alves. He is a man on a mission, helping underdog SaaS founders compete against big tech. One of my favorite things. That's a great topic. As the CEO and principal consultant at DevSquad, he has led the build of over 100 SaaS products. You heard that right, 100 plus SaaS products for Bootstrapped founders and VC-funded startups alike, leading multiple clients to multi-million-dollar exits along the way. Now he is paving the way for other up-and-coming SaaS founders by developing the strategies, tactics, and insights they need. Earned a reputation as a leading expert on taking on tech giants. Welcome a guy who has earned the reputation as a leading expert on taking on tech giants and winning. Phil Alves. Hey, Phil, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Hey, great to be here, Jeff.
Well, I love your background. And, you've built SaaS for other companies and now you have your own. Tell me about that journey.
Yeah, so I actually sold a very small SaaS that I built when I started my career. I started doing like custom software for other people. And I built this one product for a person. And I wrote about in my blog. And what happened, that blog post ranked number one on Google for a keyword for other people that want a software just like that. And initially, I just gave people like another version, kind of like I stand up the same software in different servers. And then eventually that becomes a problem because now, like when there was a bug, I had to fix in like 6 places. Wow. Yeah. So that's kind of like when I learned what a SaaS was. So I turned that into like a SaaS offer. And I ended up getting like quite a few customers in Brazil, where I'm originally from. Was a SaaS for direct sales to pay commission and manage things like that. But again, I start with building custom software. I kind of accidentally found that. And then I sold that company. It was in the low 6 figures, but was enough money for me to move from Brazil to the United States and to not work for a couple of years so I could go to school. That's why I got here in a student visa. I ended up getting a job as a CTO in a company, an e-commerce business. And then I saw there was such a big need for the people had for development teams and development teams that actually understood product and that think about the big picture. And that's how I started DevSquad. DevSquad ended up growing to like a 100 people company. And then I started having a lot of issues to follow on my promise. My promise when people hire my consulting firm is that I'll give them a high performing development team. So when it was a team of like 5, it was very easy to.
That's easy to manage, right?
It's very easy.
Yeah, 100 is a little bit different.
So we started losing customers because we were dropping the ball. And I'm like, oh, we need to do something about it. And then I went deeper. And there's a lot of research made by companies by Google of what makes a high-performing development team. There were some solutions out there that help us track some metrics that matter. And I started using some of those softwares. But eventually, I found a lot of gaps on those products. And then I remember that my own customers at DevSquad, they usually build a very successful product in the industry they know very well. And I know the industry of building high-performing development teams very well. And that's how DevStats start. It starts as a software to guide development teams to high-performing stage. And we do things like, first we benchmark where they are. We track like, how well are you planning? Are actually finishing what you say you would do? Like, how good is your release? How much of the things that you pull out is actually breaking? What's the quality of your code? Are you doing a lot of real work? And we go deeper into other stuff. But basically, that's what my software does. It's help us benchmark where development teams are and help them improve. And that, again, start with an internal tool. From the beginning, I wanted to be a SaaS product, but it first solved that problem of not me being able to my customers and tell, look, I promise you a high-performing development team, and this is science that guarantee there's a high-performing development team working on your product. Here's the benchmarks, and here's where we stack against the industry. and then from there, I kind of offered a product for other people.
Oh, that's really, really good. It's interesting. I think some of the best SaaS products come out of really solving a problem that you have because you really understand that problem very deeply.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that was your case, here.
Yes, for sure. And I totally agree with that. Like having built like hundreds of SaaS products for other people, like when the founder understands that problem very deep, he can help with the solution. Of course, there's always going to be inputs from your users and you have to understand what your users are. But at the end of the day, it's always the founder's job to call the shots, right? It's your job. Everyone's coming to you with a bunch of information.
Right.
And it's your job to digest that information and call a shot. And if you understand the market very well, you understand the problem very well, you're going to be more qualified to make the best decisions.
That makes a lot of sense because you're right. We have a lot of stakeholders that want a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just an endless mountain of requests. And so prioritizing those and, clients have different needs once and then, ultimately making that decision. So is that something that came easy for you or has that been difficult?
At this stage on this product I'm building is pretty easy, I would say, but I have been building software products for 10 plus years, maybe 15 plus years. And I have been learning along the way. I have been mentoring my clients, help them make decisions, learning from their mistakes, learning from my mistakes. I tried to build other SaaS products before they fail. And I think the number one reason was the industry that I didn't understand very well. I was just like going after the money and like, I can build software. Let's go to this industry that I know nothing about.
That happens a lot.
Yeah, it does. I think I'd probably like have 7. I wrote down another day failing SaaS ideas that I tried to take into market. And when I look deeper, it came down to me not understanding that problem well enough,
That's really, really good insight. In doing that. That's something a lot of people don't talk a lot about. Everyone from the outside, it looks like, hey, you rolled out of bed and you built a company with 100 devs and they're all high performing and it's just magic. But there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah. And again, and you really learn when shit hits the fan, right? It's when I started losing customers and when you start dropping the ball that I was like, what's going on? We need a solution. And the software became a solution. But even, though that company grew to successful and we work with like public companies, with very big companies as customers, I was still trying to do other stuff on the side. I was still trying to I want to have a SaaS offer. And I was still failing at those, even though I was running this decent sized consulting firm, Wow.
So in building the software, I think it's really smart that you put the benchmarks in there for the industry. How did you come up with that idea and how did you get that data for comparison?
So the data already exists. So like the first, in 2017, there was a research called Dora Research and they come up with the Dora metrics. Google put that research out. And that
was nice of them.
Yeah. That was the foundation of like a lot of products similar to us. Kind of like OKRs become a thing. And after OKRs, there was a lot of products to track OKRs. That research was a point where the Dora metrics research come out. A lot of products came out to base on that research, how people track. And that's kind of like how we start using competitor softwares. But then there was other researches that were made and like being able to organize that data in a way that makes sense in the different team sizes. And so like, I didn't make up any of those numbers, but I feel like I was able to figure out what are the 6 ones that are the most important. And that's your benchmark. And how can we make this more approachable if you are not Google? So there's a lot of other companies trying to solve the same problem, and they're all kind of going off of the same industry standards. But now also that I have companies using the software, I have been using the software for a while. We start to create our own benchmarks and adapt and say, here, this is what you have to focus on. Anyways, long story short, it come up from the beginning, it started with the Dora metrics research, but from there we start to develop and to understand and to test. And Dora metrics alone wasn't enough. That's what we learned. And like what it is that we have to put on top of this to make sure now those numbers are meaningful for business that are trying to get something done the next quarter. Because it doesn't matter if your team is high performing if you're not adding real value for product and for the business. And other donor metrics tell you you're high performing. Hey, you're moving very quick. Great. You're moving in the right direction.
That's an important thing.
so that's, kind of like how I come up with those numbers and build this. I feel like I try to be like kind of like a GPS for development teams. This is how you get to the place you're trying to get with the fewest turn. This is kind of like the quickest way to where you're trying to accomplish.
I think that's really useful, as I've spent a lot of years building SaaS products, and some small teams, big teams, and we have had that exact scenario where everybody is working and productive, and we're pumping out releases, and then you're like, why did we build that? So it's having that GPS and really thinking about strategically, what are we working on, and how should we be working?
Yeah. And even for years, it was kind of like a taboo to talk about development teams' performance because we didn't know how to track. We knew story points were useless. We knew like software's varying complexity, the team that you have. So like up until Google come with that research, like there was a big community that say like, hey, you can't track developers' performance. And like, but I kind of see building softwares, we're not different than athletes. Like, like athletes, they have a mentor, the coach are making them better. And that's why we built that too. Like myself, my role as the CEO of a firm, a tech consulting firm, is to mentor my people. But then there's CTOs, VP of engineering. And those people, they need tools to be able to mentor and benchmark and help their teams perform better, because that's what they're going to be hold against anyways. Like how well you were hired to make sure this team does do a good job, but you don't have a lot of tools nowadays that allows you to even know if you are progressing or not.
Right. And I think that's a really important thing is, what is a good job? What is a high performing team? What does that really mean? So in with your software, what have you learned in building this? What makes a high performing team, and how is it different in a large organization with hundreds of developers versus a smaller organization with maybe 2 or 10 or 20?
Yeah, I think when you're small, it's even like, I'll say under 10, it's easy for everyone to communicate and to see where you are and to like get to that stage kind of like by the feeling of your pants. Like you're fine, where things are. As you start to get bigger, that becomes a lot more complex. And so that's where having a tool that can help you manage that will really help. But like what I learned with DevStats, it's that there's only 6 numbers that if we benchmark those numbers, we're going to be able to see where every kind of team is. And like was by like going and looking at every number that the industry was tracking those numbers and see how that was affecting our own teams to figure out what are the numbers that really, really matter. And that's how we create that benchmark. So everyone is tracking a bunch of data, but we are the only product out there that has this benchmark. I can get someone in and like, you connect your GitHub, you connect your Jira, and I'm able to tell you right away, like if it's green, yellow, or red. That's how kind of like how we did. And I brought that from airplanes. I'm a pilot.
Okay.
That's my hobby. And so when I get on my airplane, if things are on the green, I know I'm going to leave.
That's an important thing.
And there's like those 6 instruments, like the 6 main instruments. The 6 dials, and if those are good, those are all that I need. And there's a lot of other things going around, and I can look at that to have a deep analysis if something go wrong with the main 6. But the main 6 tell me exactly, and if it's on the green, it's good. It's on the yellow, I have to be careful. It's on the red, I have a problem. So what's that like trying to simplify from green, red, yellow? Here's the 6 dials, and then going from there. And that's kind of like what we learn. And it's the things that we're looking at planning accuracy, we're looking at cycle time, like planning accuracy, like how, if we say we would do this many items in our sprint, we were able to actually do what we would say. We would be surprised of how many times we actually are not able to do what we can say. So we have to go back to planning.
Unfortunately, I'm not surprised at that.
Cycle time,
which make it. Yeah, that feature's delayed next time.
And then we also
track the next time.
And then we usually actually are tracking how many sprints, because we track oh, look, this has been pushing over for 2 or more sprints. That's maybe not a priority at all. Stop putting in the sprint if you're going to push over and over and over.
Right.
And then we track how many deploys, what's the deploy frequency that you are doing. Teams that deploy more frequently are usually more efficient. It means that their systems are good, that they're having good testing in place, and so they're being able to move things to production quicker. We track of the things that move to production, how many times they broke. We call it change failure rate. And you want to keep that under 10%, because if things keep breaking, there's something wrong.
Yes.
We track the size of the code reviews that we are doing. Teams that are doing code reviews with a bunch of lines of code are not doing actually real code review. So we learn if code reviews is under 400 lines of code, actual code review is happening, and that's allowing the code to be better. We track how much real work has to be done, how many lines of code that you just wrote that you have to keep changing, in the period of the next 20 days after you got live. So it usually means a disalignment with business and where we're going. It means that if things are changing that quickly and there's a lot of real work, there's a problem. So those are the main metrics that we benchmark. And then from there, we go deeper and help people improve them. But it's one single screen. If it's all on the green, you're great. But most companies are not all on the green, of course. And
sure.
Then you see where you go to fix it.
And that's where you go deeper, is when you see the yellows or reds, and that's where you go deep to see what the real underlying issue is.
Yes. And then you have all kinds of reports that kind of relate to the underlying issues. And then most companies have all those reports, but they don't have tell me in 30 seconds, how am I doing? And if I'm performing or not. And that's what we're able to do it.
I think that's a brilliant concept. And it's something that I've experienced in the pain that you're solving.
Yeah.
So how many, before DevStats, you see the statistics. How many releases or how many projects like that are successful? Is it high? Is it low?
Sorry, I don't think I fully understood your question.
Well, how many dev projects, releases, how many of those are successful when they're released? Is it, 10%, 20, 100%?
So by successful, you mean they didn't break, or they were able to get to market quicker? What do you mean by successful?
I think that's a really good question, is really defining what success is. And what I really mean here is in successful is that the implementation, things were delivered that were promised, and that they were released and didn't break. Okay,
so I would say what we're tracking there, we want to have, of other releases that we do, less than 15% of the stuff we take out break. That's a good place to be. If you're seeing 0%, you're probably moving too slow. And if you're seeing 50%, or higher, something it's wrong. And so I could go back to my own teams, on those teams that we lost customers. We were messing up 30% of the time. And
wow.
that got people very frustrated.
Yeah.
And so because we connect okay, what happened? Why we were messing up so often? And again, we want to keep that under 15% to make sure release. But that's another thing. Engineer has to work very close with product, and DevStats is the engineering piece. So if engineer is able to deliver on what they promise, and what they promise didn't end up having a huge impact, then they have to talk with product. Why is our release plan wrong? But DevStats is to help the engineer leader, right? So the main metric here that we like to improve, it's our planning accuracy rate, because developers are way too optimist. Most times where we connect DevStats, we look at the planning accuracy rate. They're making great releases and they're not breaking shit, and that's good. But they're usually wrong 50% of the time on what they thought they would be able to accomplish, or they only accomplish 50% of what they thought. We saw teams that were finishing 20% of what they accomplished, because people think if we plan to do a lot of stuff, we're going to do it, and we won't. And then or we're putting too much, and that's what is generating the break of things breaking, the failure rate being too high, is because you're trying to do too much in the period of time.
Right.
But yeah, that's one of the main metrics that we are able to help even successful teams improve. Like they're delivering great code and that's amazing, the product out there, but they're just planning very badly. And if we can help them plan better, and all the stakeholders will be happier that way. And that's one of the main numbers that we help teams that are doing well, like things that the market doesn't break, but they're not planning as well as they thought they would.
Right.
The developers are usually very optimist. So.
Yes. Yeah, we could do a lot. We used to do that with story points. And it was the same thing. And, oh yeah, we could do, however many it was. And it was always short.
Yeah.
Yeah. They always thought they could do a whole lot more.
And then we're able to look like last quarter, last 6 months, and really point out this is how much you can actually do. Let's go there. And when we did this much, stuff broke more. The quality of our code reduced because of this. And so we end up doing huge code reviews. So that's where it gets super interesting.
So what's been the best thing that you've learned from running the dev shop, having people out, and using DevStats?
So it's been amazing on the dev shop to be able to be more science driven other than feeling based. One thing that sometimes we look at some products that weren't doing great, but the clients were happy. It was just their feeling. And there's other products where that we were doing amazing, but the feeling people were not thinking that we were doing bad. So bringing that to the consulting firm allow us to take a little bit of the emotions out of making decisions and just look like where we really are and where we're accomplishing. And then as I wrote that out to other organizations, to the customers that we have now, that's kind of like one of the biggest benefits that they have. It's because when emotions go high, intelligence goes down.
Yes. That is 100% right.
So can we, instead of being emotional, look at data and see where we really are? Because sometimes things are not as bad as we think we are, or they're not as good as we think they are. That's usually how it goes. And so the product really helps us do that internally and is helping us do that with our customers. So that's kind of the biggest lesson, being able to make decisions not so much on emotions.
I think that's really important, is making it data driven, but you're really teaching the clients what to want. You're teaching them what success looks like. And everybody is looking at the same thing. So it's not just a feeling anymore, or, I like this or don't, but everybody is really looking at the same scorecard. Mm-hmm. And so, we have some common things to discuss. We have a common frame of reference.
Exactly, for sure. And then also that makes it easy, because if everyone understands what success looks like, it's easier to know if you're successful or not.
Right.
Or definition of done, it's been a huge problem.
And that's really fuzzy in a lot of dev projects, is what does done look like? What does success look like? And you ask 10 different stakeholders and they'll give you 10 different answers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, we are on the mission to solve that problem.
That is a great one to solve. So you have a podcast as well, SaaS Origin Stories. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So it was also kind of like a strategy that I want to become a better SaaS founder. And I want to help my customers to build better SaaS. And one thing that I learned is usually when we try to build a company, we look at how a company that we like, a successful company, is doing right now. And we want to just copy what they're doing right now. But what we really have to think about is how they started and what insights can we get about how they started. Because the way you act when you're small is very different than the way that you act when you're bigger.
Yes.
And I didn't find a lot of content out there. There's of the biggest companies, there's a lot of content of how they did. But most of my customers, the successful customers, they have B2B SaaS making a little bit over $10 million in the 8 figures. And that's an amazing business, but it's not newsworthy. So the idea of the podcast was to interview people and learn about their origin stories, what they did in the early days, so people can learn from what it matters, and they can copy what it matters. For example, think about my consulting firm. We're big. We have a 7 figures marketing budget. So if you want to do a consulting firm and try to do what I'm doing, it's going to be very hard, because you're not going to have a 7 figures marketing budget.
Right.
But if you talk to me about so how did you start? How did you get your first customers? How did you figure it out? That's what's going to help you start your consulting firm. And that's
Right.
what's going to help you learn. And that's the whole idea of the SaaS Origin Stories podcast is like, how do you start? How do you come up with your idea? How did you fund it? How long did it take to develop your first version? So, and it's been amazing because I'm learning from other founders and I'm applying the lessons that I'm learning on my own SaaS and then applying with the customers that we serve, at DevSquad. And I think it's helping people to listen too, because we just crossed $1,000 listeners per episode. And
that's great.
And it's, I'm like, oh, people are finding this useful, but was kind of selfish. I want to learn from these people. How can I get them to talk to me for an hour?
It's a great strategy. And I do the same thing. I learn a ton in talking to great people. But I think this a really important thing is to just a kind of a missed market. And because a lot of people are talking to the unicorn founders and massive companies and they don't remember what it was like. Mm-hmm. When they were, 10 million or what they did to get to 10 or 20. Mm-hmm. They might remember 100 to 500, but it's very, very different. So I think that's a market that a lot of time is overlooked.
Mm-hmm. And it might be, it's even different kind of founder, like if it's the same founder, the person kept changing. But I have a friend and he took a company to 10 million, had a lot of investors, and then he got fired. And then he took another company to 10 million, got a lot of investors. He got fired. And then he's like, look, I am the 0 to 10 guy. That's the part that I know. I have another guy that I know. And then he got brought on as later CEO, kind of like to replace the 0 to 10. And then he'd go 10 to 100. And then he also got fired. And then he's like, okay, I am the 10 to 100. So like, it's like you have to become different person.
Yes.
To do that. You either change a lot yourself or you just stay who you are and go do again what you love to do. And so again, and the founders that are still there in those companies, like they grew to 100 million, they're doing different things than what they were doing.
Absolutely.
0 to 10,
Yeah, very, very different. And you're right. I think there's not a lot of people that can scale like that. It's pretty rare. And sometimes they're a figurehead. Sometimes they really do scale. Sometimes their responsibilities are significantly reduced, and investors will bring in the grown-up team to run the company, the professionals, squeeze the life out of the company. But it's a very interesting dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's very funny because the cocoa professionals can never take a company from 0 to 1 or from 1 to 10.
Exactly. They have no idea what to do. They're like, where are my people to do this stuff? And it's like, no, it's just you.
Yeah, we work with this one guy. He was an M&A. And then he decided to build his product. And then he had his whole team behind him. And one day he showed up to his office and there was no power or internet. And then he's like, who is responsible to paying this? And he's like, oh shit, it's me.
Welcome to entrepreneur life. Oh, that's too funny. So what have been some of the great lessons that you've learned along the way?
I have learned that it's never as easy as we think would be.
Yes, that's true.
Like I built my first business and then I moved to the United States and I was like, I built a business in Brazil. I sold that business. It's going to be super easy to build a second business, and took like 2 or 3 times as longer to get my consulting firm to the size I'll be able to get in a year or two. And then I was like, I'm going to do a SaaS product. I have built SaaS products for a bunch of people. I can build my own SaaS product. That's going to be easy. Again, so fell a couple of times. Now DevStats is doing much better, but still it's not the speed that I thought I'll be able to move, even though I have all this knowledge, so like, I guess the big lesson is like, in practice, the tier is different.
Yes. So, because things take longer than you think and they're more expensive, what are some ways that you've found that work well to fund companies?
So, one way, specifically to fund SaaS companies, it worked for me and work for a lot of my customers, is to build a business first that's less complex than a software company. And then use that business to fund your second business.
Interesting.
That reduced a lot of the stress. I saw a lot of these spin-off SaaS products that I work on that went to become 8 figures companies. But because when you build a company that's less complex than software, for example, service business or like a retail business, you still have to hire, you still have to learn marketing. But in SaaS, you're going to lose money for a longer period of time. It's more complex. So I believe building SaaS as a spin-off product, it's overlooked because everyone wants to build a huge unicorn. That's kind of changing now with the economy where we are. It's kind of being cool again to building profitable business. So it's kind of
I don't think it's ever not been cool.
Actually, I remember being on this basketball game with a friend of mine that was building a VC fund company, and I was complaining about how much taxes I had to pay, and he was like, "Oh, your business make money? That's not cool." You should be like losing because eventually you're going to sell for a bunch of money. But I feel like I like to put the odds in my favor. And when you're trying to build a unicorn, you're kind of putting the odds against you.
Right.
If you're just trying to build a successful 8-figure SaaS, and you're coming from another business and you can fund it yourself, you don't have that. Like the thing with investors, if like for their numbers to work, they can't invest in a company that's going to make only $10 million. You better make $100 million, $300 million bucks.
Right.
But for you, like,
that's pretty good.
That's amazing. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So like I have a customer, for example, he's a photographer. He has a very big photographer business. And now he's turning that into a SaaS for photographers. That's going to add a bunch of revenue for him. So I think there's many strategies and they're all valid. And I love on my podcast to hear about all like the different strategies. And like actually last week I interviewed a guy that raised $300 million and it was super cool to learn from him. But I think, one strategy that's overlooked, it's just doing as a spin-off of the company that you have and use those funds to fund your SaaS and build your SaaS. That's how I'm doing. That's how I saw a lot of my customers on my consulting firm do and build a lot of businesses, even business that they sold for quite a bit of money. So it's just one strategy. There's many strategies you have to understand and see what you're going to do. And also, even in my podcast, I interview people that start with this strategy, grew to a point and then swap the strategy to now go and raise a bunch of money.
Sure.
But I do believe it's the way to really put the odds in your favor. If you start a business and you use that business to fund your SaaS, product.
That's a great concept. I think maybe we should redefine what a unicorn is instead of, being a billion-dollar company or now maybe multi-billion. I think it should be a profitable SaaS company because those are so hard to find.
I know.
But there are a lot of great bootstrap companies, and I think that's really smart. And the longer you can delay, even if you do raise funds, and there's nothing wrong with that, but the longer you can wait to do that and build a model that's profitable, that's scalable, that you get to $5-10 million in revenue and then go raise, you get much better terms, you get much better deals, you keep a lot more equity than if you are trying to raise and you have $100K revenue.
Yes, or no revenue at all.
Or no revenue, right? Pre-revenue.
Like, some people like if you have just the right resume, you're able to raise pre-revenue. Like I interviewed this girl and she worked at Cloudflare and she was an early employee there. So when she go to raise money, investors would trust her. And I love her company and what she's building, but it's just a different strategy. And it, in my opinion, carry more risks. I believe we should focus on profitability first. And if you have something that it's going to be huge, great. But if it's not going to be huge, at least you have a profitable business.
And I think that's something that is, again, is maybe a little bit overlooked is if you build a $10 million company that's profitable, that's a great thing because you have options. You can sell, you can keep it. You don't have to sell. You're not worried about runway or running out of cash because it's profitable. You're making money. And there's nothing wrong with a company that makes $2, $3, $4, $5 million a year. That's pretty good living.
Yeah, it's probably the best job you ever gonna have.
Exactly.
Because let's look at the alternative. You build a huge company, but you own less. Your salary as a CEO is probably the same 3 million, but now you have a bunch of people to stress you out. And then when you sell, you only get like 10%.
Right.
So then you got $30 million, which kind of like could be the same of just building a smaller company worth $30 million, for example, or something like that. You know,
right.
Because you build a company 10 times bigger that sell for 300 million or for $1 billion, let's say. but then you only get keep 100 million of that billion. Or you build a smaller company, less stressful, sell for 100 million and you keep your 100 million, and it's like apples to apples, so that's
right.
And again, like, think about who you're serving. I think DevStats is the only product in our space that's not funded by VC. So
love that.
So, like, I think that's an unfair advantage because I'm serving my customers and I'm really focusing on solving the problem, as they're serving like their investors. They're trying to go to massive scale, and that's why you have so many layoffs right now. It's because people were over optimist and they were like hiring, and now they're like, oh, they were a little bit irresponsible.
A lot irresponsible in some cases. But you're right. I think it is fundamentally different in being bootstrapped and really being focused on serving your customers and doing the right thing for them. And sometimes that means building something now or reinvesting in the company versus taking something out or trying to meet a quarterly number because you have to hit that growth number to keep the investors happy, or they're going to bring you into the boardroom and shoot you. That's just a completely different set of priorities.
Yeah. Like in my own consulting firm, I have been able to hey, we're not going to take any customers for the next many months because I want to make sure customers are not coming here and leaving here. Let's fix our process first. So being able to even make those decisions of when you want to grow, when you're ready to go, it's amazing. And that's some of the optionality that you have in your bootstrap, Yeah. Another thing, there's this stigma against building a lifestyle business. But why do we build business? Isn't for us to have an amazing life?
You would think, right?
Is it for you to be able to enjoy life with the people that you love and do the things that you want? So I believe every business should start as a lifestyle business. And then if you figure out there is something bigger there, and then you can scale and raise a bunch of money. But are we building business to have a better life?
Right. And you're right. I think there is somewhat of a stigma around that, but there shouldn't be. And I don't think those things are mutually exclusive in building a lifestyle business and building an empire. You really don't have to choose between those. You can build a lifestyle business that turns into an empire because you're reinvesting, you're doing smart things.
Yeah, exactly. Because I see so many founders that invest everything and they keep reinvesting, they keep losing. They never build enough of a nest egg or enough of being in a headspace that you can actually build a big company.
Yes.
If you take care of yourself first, you pay yourself good money, you put some money aside, and now you're in a better position to go to make big bets. That's why second, third, fourth time founders are so much more successful. It's because I can afford to make bets and not lose. Or lose because I'm going to be paid.
Right. They're not worried about how am I going to pay the mortgage if this bet goes bad.
Yeah. So I believe putting yourself in a good place to be able to make strong bets is what you have to do. And again, you go back to the idea, maybe don't even start with a SaaS business. Build something first that will allow you to have money to build a SaaS business and to make strong bets.
And do you have a specific methodology that you follow in doing that in investing? Some people do traction, some people do Profit First, Mike Michalowicz. Is there a specific methodology you use?
Yes, I love Profit First. Have been following for years. Again, because I know my lifestyle would change a lot. I fly my own airplane, but I know because of Profit First that even if all my business go under, I'll be okay because I have been putting money away and I have been investing in real estate. I have been investing in other things. So you never build a business that you wanted to fail, but markets change quick. There's those black swan events, like COVID.
Yep.
And what if you're putting 100% back in and never took anything out? You look very stupid after 10 years working so hard and having nothing to show for, So,
and that's sad. That happens way too often.
It does happen way too often. So I will be super sad if all my business go under because again, I want them to be a lot more successful, but I would have something to show for and I wouldn't have to ever go back to work to someone else.
Yes. Yeah, that's really, really good. I think that's brilliant. And we'll make sure and link Profit First and tag Mike Michalowicz. He's a great guy. Brilliant.
Yeah, I remember listen to his book and I was most people are one bad month away from going broke.
Yep.
And that just really hit home.
That hurts.
It hurts. And I was like, that shouldn't be me. And then I really, that's kind of like when I change, and then I figure we have to put money out of our business and to be in that place where we can take those bigger bets, you have to take care of yourself and your family first.
Yeah. So how do you know when to make a big bet or not?
I think it comes down to the basic principle of investing. You never invest in something they cannot afford to lose.
Good rule.
You know, like, so never make a bet they can afford to be wrong. You know, so that's how you do it. And then as you develop, you can always afford to do better. And I work with this guy, and he's like a very successful businessman. And he was like, I only do small business. And his businesses are huge. But for him, it's small, you know? So maybe you only make small bets. But like, as you get better and better, your small is different than my small.
Yeah. That's interesting. Perspective does change. As your businesses that you're growing, they get bigger, your perspective changes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
what do you do as your business grows? What do you do to keep yourself growing? So you're growing ahead of your business. So you're not becoming the bottleneck. Yeah.
I think you always have to be studying, to be learning, to be willing to change who you are, and to be self-evaluating. You know, I do work with the possibility that at some point I might not be the right person to run my business. There is a chance that my business is going to overgrow me. So like, I think you have to be realistically with yourself that you can fail, and that things could go south, or your business can grow bigger than you. And if you don't want that to happen, you have to keep working on. I read a lot. I talk with a lot of people. Like, I remember when I was building the business for the first million, I would talk with a lot of people, like entrepreneurs that were in that were able to do that. And then later, I met a lot of entrepreneurs that have done the 0 to 10. And I don't know many people that have done 10 to 100, but that's not the stage that I am. So that's okay. So, you know, but you have to like be closer to those people.
Sure. Well, where can people learn more about you and DevSquad and DevStats online?
So the quickest way is to go to my website, philalves.com, PHILALVES. So there you're going to have the links to both my companies, to my podcast, to my Twitter. And you can sign up to my newsletter over there too.
Excellent. And we'll make sure and link that in the show notes. And everybody should subscribe to SaaS Origin Stories as well.